It began like any other spring morning in suburban Columbia, Illinois, quiet, routine, and forgettably normal. May 5th, 2009, the air was cool, and the sun had not yet fully risen when Chris Coleman slipped out of the house just before 6 a.m. He said he was heading to the gym, but when he returned a little over an hour later, he found something that would tear his world and the entire community apart. Inside that beige two-story house on Robert Drive, 3 lives had been brutally extinguished. Chris Coleman had been a Marine, a Christian, a husband, and a father. He worked as head of security for internationally famous televangelist Joyce Meyer. He and his wife, Sherry, were the picture of the American dream to sons. A handsome home, steady income, and regular church attendance. But beneath that shining surface, something was rotting. And no one knew how deep the decay ran until it was too late. Just 6 months earlier, the Colemans began receiving threats anonymous, vile, and terrifying. Emails with subject lines like, "Chris's family, they are dead," arrived in inboxes. Letters left in their mailbox screamed threats written in shaky, hateful scrawl. They didn't ask for money. They didn't come with instructions. They came only with warnings and promises. Deny your God publicly or else. No more opportunities. Time is running out for you and your family. The chilling part wasn't just the message. It was how much the sender seemed to know. They referenced Joyce Meyer's travel, schedule down to the city, and date and even detailed when Chris would be away. Whoever it was, they knew the Colemans were vulnerable, and they were watching. In response, the Columbia police began investigating. A neighbor, Detective Sergeant Justin Barlow, even installed a security camera facing the Coleman mailbox to catch the stalker in the act, but no one was ever seen delivering the letters. Concerned that Sherry wasn't answering her phone, she usually did by now, with the threats hanging over them. He said he feared something might be wrong. Barlow called in backup and met another officer at the house. There was no answer at the door. They found a screen propped awkwardly against a patio. Table out back and an open window. The officers climbed in. What they found inside would haunt them for the rest of their careers. The walls were covered in blood-red spray paint. "You have paid. I am always watching." Punished, the words looked angry, rushed, like they'd been scrawled in a fit of rage. The house reeked of chemicals. And upstairs, the horror was complete. Sherry, 31, was found on the ground in the master bedroom. Her body was already stiff with rigor mortis. In 2 other rooms, their sons, 11-year-old Garrett and 9-year-old Gavin, were also dead. They lay in their beds as if asleep except for the strangulation marks and the obscene graffiti sprayed on their bedsheets and bodies. All 3 had been manually strangled, up close, personal. As officers continued their grim discovery, they heard the basement door open. Chris Coleman had arrived. They told him to wait outside. He did, quietly, without question, without attempting to rush in. By 7:05 a.m., a triple homicide was confirmed. Why had this family been slaughtered in their own beds? And more disturbingly, why had Chris been the only one left untouched? Publicly, Chris portrayed himself as heartbroken. He cried. He answered questions. But something felt off. Behind the scenes, the investigation was gaining momentum. Rigor mortis told its own story. Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin had died between 3 o'clock and 5 a.m. Chris claimed he left the house at 5:43 a.m., but that meant they were likely already dead. And Chris had still been inside the house. Forensic handwriting experts compared the spray-painted messages to Chris's handwriting and found striking similarities. Scratch marks were found on Chris's arms, poorly concealed beneath his clothes. Surveillance footage from Detective Barlow's camera showed no one approaching the house or mailbox that morning. Then came the final unraveling. The threatening emails had been sent from an address traced back to Chris himself. DestroyChris@gmail.com. He created the account 6 months earlier. Matched spelling errors found on his home computer. Even the way he spelled opportunities wrong with an extra U. Matched spelling errors found on his home computer. It was all a fabrication. A smokescreen ... But why? Investigators discovered the motive buried in a Florida romance. Chris had been having an affair with Tara Lintz, a former friend of Sherry's. She was beautiful, outgoing, and believed Chris when he told her he was getting a divorce. Chris promised Tara a life together. He gave her a promise ring, jotted down her favorite flowers, perfume, and even potential baby names. On her calendar, she had already penciled in their wedding day. But for Chris, divorce wasn't an option. Working for Joyce Meyer came with a moral clause. Divorce could mean losing his job, his income, his image, his entire world. So he made a choice. Instead of leaving Sherry, he planned her murder. And the murder of his sons because dead, they couldn't testify. Dead, they couldn't cry for their mother. Dead, they were ... silent. He had rehearsed it, emailed himself threats, and built a narrative to insulate himself from suspicion. But he underestimated the timeline of death, the physical evidence, and the persistence of the investigators. On May 19, 2009, just 2 weeks after the murders, Chris Coleman was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. In 2011, he was convicted and sentenced to 3 life terms, 1 for each of the innocent lives he destroyed. Let's know what you think about Chris Coleman in the comments section below.